So now I want to look at something completely different, and that's called the unit circle, which is trigonometry beyond 90 degrees. So we've been doing 90 degrees. We're going to go beyond that. So this is called a unit circle because, oh, my phone is obviously not in silent. So a unit circle is one with a radius of 1. The unit is just 1. And so this distance right from here to here is labeled a distance of 1, meaning this right here would also be a distance of 1. What we need to know in a unit circle is we're going to be drawing angles. So for instance, I might say draw 157 degrees. So I want to draw that angle. If I'm going to draw that angle, I have to know, well, where do I start? And what does 157 even look like? And so what we need to realize is that we're going to have an initial place to start. So this right here is called the initial arm. And then this arm is going to get rotated, and then we're going to move it all the way around. And so we call it the initial arm. If I had to graph, let's try 135 degrees. If I had to draw that, that is very loud. I don't know if you hear that. But if I have to draw 135 degrees, well, I would start, my initial arm would start here, and I would move it up. And this right here is 90 degrees. And then this right here is 180. Now I need to draw 135, so it's going to be somewhere in here. Now, 135, I don't know, what's 45 degrees? If I did exactly halfway here? If I drew exactly halfway between 90 and 180, that's a 45 degrees would be exactly halfway. So 90 plus 45, 90 plus 45, 5 plus 0 is 5, 9 plus 135. Okay, so I would say that 135 degrees is right there. So what we need to do is we need to have initial arm, and then we move the arm like that till we get there. So when we draw these things, we need an initial arm, and we need so this is initial, I forgot to write that. And this is called a terminal arm. This is where we stopped. And we need an arrow to tell us that we went in this direction. Because if we wanted to, we actually could have moved in this direction. And we would have moved more than 135 degrees. This is called moving in a negative direction. So we want to start here. We want to move in a positive direction, 135 degrees. In fact, though I have initial arm here and terminal arm here, I could do this. That's moving around a full 360, and then 135. So that would be 5. That would be 9, 495. So if I did that, this would be 495. So we're going to do a couple of practice questions here. But we need to know the initial arm and the terminal arm. And we have 90, 180. This is labeled as 270. And this, well, this is the initial arm. So this is 0. But I guess we could also label it as 360 degrees if we wanted to. So let's see if there's is there even a question here for us to do? Okay. No, there isn't even a question to do. There is questions to do, but not right now. So we want to move on to something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about sine and cosine and tangent. So another thing completely unrelated that we need to know is when things are positive. And so, because I can have sine of, and you don't know this, but I can have sine of 45 degrees. And it's going to be some number, and you're going to have to memorize the number. And I know that sine of 45 degrees is a positive number. I also know that sine of 135 degrees is also a positive number. And I know that sine of 200 degrees is a negative number. We don't know what the numbers are, but I do know that it's positive or negative. Now, you actually you're going to have to memorize when is sine of some angle positive. And so sine is positive right here, So here it's positive, and it right here is positive, and it's negative here and here. Now cosine is positive right there, and it's positive down here, and it's negative here and negative here. So if I labeled this as 90 degrees, and this is 0, 90, 180, and 270, I can say that cos of some angle in here, so cos of 200 degrees, that would lie somewhere in here. I don't know what it is, but I know that whatever number it is, I know it's going to be negative. And that's going to be helpful. Tangent is positive here, and it's positive here, and it's negative and negative. Yeah. So again, I don't know tangent of 200 degrees. I don't know what that number is, but is it positive or is it negative? Well, this is going to be 180, this is 90, this is 0, this is 270. 200 is going to be somewhere in here, moving over like that. It's somewhere in there, and that is labeled as positive. So I don't know what it is, but it's going to be a positive number. So there's one way to kind of one way to know, but one thing that's worth noting is that they're all positive in this top right-hand quadrant. The other thing that's worth noting is that they're positive in 2 quadrants in total and negative in 2. So these 2 are positive and the other 2 are negative. These 2 are positive, the other 2 are negative. These 2 are positive, the other 2 are negative. So that's good to keep in mind. And again, you don't know what I'm talking about yet, but it's good just to know this. Also note that this one's positive in the top left, and this one's positive in the bottom left, and this one's positive in the bottom right. So the positive stuffs are all over the place. They're always positive in the top right, but then the other positive, because there's only 2 quadrants that are positive, the other one varies. Here it's the top left, here it's the top left, here it's the bottom right, and here it's the bottom left. Now there is a rule that we use to memorize this, and this is called the cast rule. This is really important. C-A-S-T. Now this tells you where it's positive. So look at here in the bottom right hand side. This says that cos is positive. And if I look at cosine, sure enough, it's positive there. Then this says here that tan is positive. If I look at tangent, sure enough, it's positive there. Lastly, S tells you that in that quadrant, sine is positive. Sure enough, it is. And lastly, in this quadrant here, this says A for all. They're all positive, and sure enough, they're all positive here. So this little cast rule tells you which ones are positive where. So they're all positive there. And then in this S quadrant, sine is positive, the other ones are negative. In this one here, this tan quadrant, tan's positive, all the rest are negative. And lastly, in this one, cosine's positive, all the rest are negative. Again, this doesn't make sense yet, but these are the things that we need to know. We need to know the cast rule, and we need to know this unit circle. Initial arm, terminal arm, we need to know 0, 90, 180, 270. So that's really important. There's also one other thing, and this is just insane. And you're going to look at this, and you have to memorize this. There's one special diagram we need to memorize, and it's going to take you quite a while to learn it. But I'm going to draw it here. We need to draw this, a graph that looks a little bit bigger on this side. It's a unit circle, but we're going to draw it out of proportion a little bit. Now, we do this, and it's going to sound absurd, it's going to look absurd, but it's going to save us a lot of time later. There is another way to do it, but it requires a lot more work. So first, I'm going to label this as 0 degrees. I'm going to label this as 90 degrees, label this as 180 degrees, and label this as 270. And because it's a unit circle and there's a radius of 1, this point right here is go over 1, up nothing. So we're going to go over 1, up nothing. This point up here is go over nothing, up 1. This point right here is go to the left 1 and up none. And this point down here is go over nothing and down 1. Again, it's out of proportion because I'm putting more emphasis here, but these are what the points are called. So that's the first part. So you probably want to pause it here and you want to write these things down. Now what we need to do is we need to cut this one in half and we need to label this 45 degrees. And then you're going to kind of do that again. You're going to do one down there and one up here. So you're going to make 2 more. And you're going to call this 30 and you're going to call this 60. So these are the angles that you need to have memorized. You need to have 30 memorized, 45, 60, as well as 0, 90, 180, 270. But what are these points here on a unit circle? And this is the part where it's just going to seem like, how can I possibly memorize this? But you're going to learn it, or learn to memorize a table. There's a table that you can learn to memorize instead. Or you could learn what's called special triangles if you want to do a ton of work every time. Now, on the right-hand side, so if this is x comma y, we're looking at the right-hand side right now. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then count down 1, 2, 3. So I count to 3. Again, let me just erase that and do it over. So starting on the right, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Notice I made them smaller. So that's because I want to cut every single one of them in half. And then after that, I want to square root the tops. Square root 3, square root 2, square root 2, square root 3. I'm not going to square root 1 because the square root of 1 is 1. And this is the thing that you need to memorize. We're going to add a little bit to it, but I'm going to stop here. We'll do some questions in the next video, and we're going to add to this in a moment. All right, but I want you to try to create this on your own. Do it like maybe a couple times and see if you can figure this one out. And then from there, once you have this memorized, a lot of the questions will be easier for you.